Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy show. My name is Hasani.
And I'm Danny.
And listen, we are in a love series and we're really excited about it because for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be unpacking the characteristics of love. If you've just now joined us, please tune in yesterday as we restarted this love challenge and we were breaking down 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and we're going to go deep and further into that conversation today. But before we get started, we have a couple of announcements. Number one, we have a last chance weekend coming up this weekend, March 7th through the 9th. It is not too late. You can still get in. So make sure you click the link in the description to find out more about it because it could be transformational for your relationship. Also, we want to take the time
to make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. You will not miss a show when we go live, okay? So make sure you do that and also share it with your friends and family.
And last but not least, you know we're in this 28-day love challenge. If you have not registered, get in now. You can start. It's not too late.
It's not too late. And you know what? People are probably thinking February is over, but that's the problem. The fact that we decide to show and share love on the shortest month of the year. That ain't right. That is wrong. We should be loving all year long. So if you missed it, if you didn't complete it, let's do this restart. We shared with our audience that we kind of took L after coming back from New Orleans. We had caught COVID and we just were taken all the way out. So even we are doing a restart because we know how important it is. So join us.
All right, guys, we're going to dive into today's conversation. We're talking about kindness, okay? So the title is How Kindness Can Save Troubled Marriages, because many of you find yourself in turbulent situations. You don't know how to get out. And the things that we're encouraging you to do actually work. You just have to trust the process and dive on in. But foundationally, let's go through what love is, because we know that love is more than just a feeling. It is an action. It is a behavior. It is a disposition. It is an attitude. So let's get into it. Love is patient. It's kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. Always perseveres. Love never fails. So we're talking about kindness. I can't tell you how important kindness is. Now, certain people just have a natural disposition and personality style of being kind. And then other people can be mean and surly, or some people are just neutral, right? Yes. So for some people, it's going to take more work to get this done.
Yeah, because some people just are not kind. Some people naturally just are hard and rough. That doesn't mean they're not kind on the inside. Let's be clear. Okay? Because sometimes I'm sure I hit a dagger for some people who are feeling like people always say I'm mean. People say I look mean. I get it. I understand. I remember when I was young, people used to come up to me. I'm minding my business and they would be like, smile. It ain't that bad. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm just fine. You know, some of us just have a disposition of...
Some people are just hard-faced.
Benignness. Benignness, that's the word.
Yeah, I mean,
you're just benign. You're not necessarily joyful. You don't show up always happy to the situation because ain't nothing to be happy about. But on the inside, there's something in there ticking. So, you know, there's that. And then there are people who are intentionally, you know, just mean. And they're mean because people were mean to them. And so you might be up against all of that. But the word says that we are supposed to show kindness to one another. So if you're about this word and if you're about this life, then even if you are a mean and surly person, you need to get busy learning what are the attributes of kindness and how can I start to act kind even if I don't feel kind, because your act will precede the feeling.
Now, we've all been to a restaurant and we had that server who is stank. We've all been in line at the supermarket and the person in front of us or behind us was tripping. We've all experienced these things in passing, but what about when you are married to that one? And that is your everyday. And you're trying to figure out, how do I get through? How do I make it? Because this just don't feel good. Like, I didn't sign up for all of this.
And there wasn't this mean in the beginning. Where'd all this mean come from, right?
Or maybe the
or maybe
mean
you the
one,
reason.
Okay.
You incited the meanness.
But maybe the mean one or the surly one, or just not, maybe that's not your disposition. Maybe you're just intense and serious, or maybe whatever it is, you just are not kind. You're the one right? How do you get out of your funk? How do you get unstuck? That's what we're going to dive in today. But let's give you a comprehensive definition of what kindness is so that you know what you look like. Because you said something. You said they may be acting one way on the outside, but on the inside, they're a different way. It made me think of the movie Inside Out. Right? Inside Out, if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. If you don't have kids, maybe you didn't see it, but it's a phenomenal movie that talks about all of the emotions that operate on the inside of us. And sometimes we have an outward disposition, but an inward reality that's not reflecting outwardly. So let's get into this conversation. Kindness, by definition, love is kindness. Kindness is a multifaceted behavior marked by acts of generosity, number one, consideration, number two, and concern for others without expecting praise or reward. It is often characterized by attributes such as empathy, compassion, patience, and selflessness. Kindness involves a willingness to do good or give pleasure to others, as is a fundamental aspect of human connection that fosters mutual respect and understanding. Golly, what a dense definition. There's a lot there.
I don't know. I feel like everybody should be like, darn, am I kind?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm failing the kind test right now.
But what it demonstrates is that it's not just a personality disposition, it is an act. Like that was very meaty, right? So there are actions and things that you can actually do that represent kindness. And I think it's important that we kind of unpack this.
Okay, let's do it.
The first thing that jumps out is the word generosity, right? And it's important to be generous in a matter. There's so many people who are very selfish. They're very self-centered. They're only thinking about themselves. I went to Jimmy Buff's and I got a sandwich for me.
Jimmy Buff's?
I'm just saying. I got me a sandwich.
Okay.
But I wasn't thinking about you because I figured you figured it out when you got home. Like, you know what to do. You know how to cook. Like, I'm not generous means, what would Danielle like? What would she want on her sandwich? Now, even though I don't like spice, I'm going to make her sandwich bland when I know she likes a little bit more spice. So I need to be considerate and generous in my thinking. And do it right.
That's, you're talking good. You're talking good right now because, a lot of times people, it's one-sided. And so, one side of the relationship, the person's putting out all the things and being considerate and taking care of detail. And then when it's their turn to receive the same, it's half done, it's sloppy, it's barely put together, it is not to the standard. You know what I'm saying? And so that is something to consider. Generosity is giving of yourself. It is self-sacrificing in that moment because it's not just about you. Jimmy Buff's, we ain't seen that in like 20 years. But anyway, that's from Jersey. That's way back in the day. But I mean, it's true. Like being generous with your spouse in heart and mind and action. Like, so in heart, it's like, you have a generous heart to your spouse. Whatever I got is yours, boo. That's generosity. In mind, I'm thinking about me. I'm thinking about you. In action, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for you, right? So that is generosity. And that is so important because I think it can be felt when there's no lack of generosity. So when my husband storms through my office with a cup of coffee and he doesn't have one for me, I think to myself, you know what? Because he is always thinking of me and he is always considering me. I'm not going to trip because he didn't come with a cup of coffee this time. No, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you.
Because you have a heart of generosity. So even though I might side eye and be like, I see you got that cup of coffee, I know the heart in that, okay, you know what? 90% of the time he got 2 cups of coffee. He must be racing. That is how we should be thinking of our spouses. This goes into why kindness is so important, because if you have kindness as a little silver ribbon running through your relationship, when things happen that you don't necessarily, where you're like, hold on, what? It doesn't have to be an offense because you already know what it is.
Exactly. And generosity, getting back to what you're saying, Danielle, it's not just in the sandwich at Jimmy Buff's. It's not just in the coffee that you make, but being generous with your time, being generous with your attention, being generous with your emotional support. It doesn't just show up in very narrow ways. It's all areas. It's like being generous with yourself to your partner. It's otherly focused, right? Not self-centered where you're just focused on oneself.
Yes.
And that's critically important.
And it makes me think about the movie The Color Purple. right? That kindness, like she was being the lady who made the lemonade and spit in it and stirred it with her finger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could be kind, but you being nasty all at the same time. Like, that's not generosity. That's not giving. That is spite.
Is that nice nasty or nasty nice?
That's nice, nasty, nasty, nice, whatever you want to say. But that's the thing. Like, you know, you can do these things and be generous. Okay, you want some lemonade? I got your lemonade. You know what I mean? You could do these things in spite. Oh, you wanted a sandwich? Here's your sandwich. You know, a 30-second rule, something dropped on the floor. Like, no, you're doing what you would have somebody do to you. That's ultimate generosity.
That's a good point.
Doing what you would have somebody do to you. Don't just be giving me some lemonade with some spit in it, or you know the cup is dirty, or there was soap around the rim. Like, if you're gonna do it, then do it.
So acts of kindness come with a kind heart and disposition. You're so right, because you could do something in spite, begrudgingly,
because this is what
hesitantly.
I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Oh, I got to be kind and I got to be generous. Let me give you, no.
That's why the Bible says that God loves a cheerful giver.
Right.
Don't just give because you obligated to give.
Right.
It goes back to like even sex. Duty sex, like, here. You know, no, delight, right? Do it with a kind heart.
Here you go. Let me know when you're done holding that.
I'll tell you. All right, so we're talking about kindness. Then the next part of the definition, it talks about consideration.
Yeah.
And these words are kind of similar, but they kind of show up in a different way. Like considering, like, you know, you've heard JJ, what is it? What? WWJD, what would Jesus do? Like taking on that mindset and bringing it into a marriage where you're considering, what would Danielle do? What would she think? Or what would they like? Or what would their perspective on this be? And you know, it's including them in your train of thought, including them in your decision making, because a lot of times we make independent decisions and don't consider our spouse because we think we know best. This is my area. I got this.
Or we're just
I know
not
what's
focused,
best.
Or we're just not focused on. We're just not otherly focused, right? So we're just focused on what's in front of us, and we don't take the time to be considerate of other people and what they might think. This literally makes me think of photos. Like when you think about when you go out with your girlfriends or whatever, whoever you're with, and you take photos, you know how there's somebody in that group who's just like, let me see the photo, let me see the photo. And if the angles ain't right, you got to take all the photos again. It's the same thing. Like when you dare not post those. You dare not post those. You want to consider your spouse, and you do the same. So you want to make sure, okay, is this the best example of my partner? Would they be happy with that if they saw themselves? Am I looking good and my spouse looking good? You know what I mean? Like those are the things that really represent consideration. And it shows up in so many areas of our lives. And I don't think that all the time it's intentional. It's just sometimes we do things absent-minded without even thinking about it. We're not thinking about it. And so things don't get handled. And that's around the house. That's in your, financial affairs. That's in the house cleaning, like all the things. That's how you deal with your kids. Consideration needs to be at the core of everything. How would my spouse feel if I did this? What would my spouse think if they saw me doing that? That's a big one.
Facts.
If they saw me doing this, how would they feel about it? If they overheard me saying that, how would they feel? That's consideration.
That's consideration.
How would my spouse feel in this situation? And that goes into personality styles too, Hasani, because I think about how certain personality styles don't like being surprised. They don't like being caught off guard. It drains them to be around a lot of people. Do you know what I'm saying? And you just happen to forget that you got a ton of people coming over tonight, and you're telling them at 7 o'clock and they're about to be here in 30 minutes. That's not consideration, right? When you have a loving partner, and they're the person that gives you cards and really, is always thinking about you, and you forget their birthday. This stuff happens.
It does.
Can you believe it? Like, you've been married for how long or together how long, and you forgot? Did you forget, or did you just not consider? So consideration is huge.
It is. And it really kind of complements the next part of this definition. Concern for others. When you have a genuine concern for others, especially when your partner's going through, when your partner's down, you should be down. not to physically be down, be in a bad space, but like, for instance, if she's not doing well, I should be considerate of that. I should be concerned about that, because her health impacts the whole household, right? Her health, forget the fact that she's physically sick. If she's just not in a good mental and emotional space, like, I care about that. If she's down, I'm down as well, because I care for her. I remember years ago, not that I have to go back years, but it just really sticks out. I remember when we were in Jersey, kids were much younger, and we were on the struggle bus. It was struggle bus season. And I remember I had this bad toothache, and, going to the dentist was like a griznip. And I don't think at the time we had insurance. I don't know what the situation was, but we were on the struggle bus. And I was such in pain. And for like days, I was in pain. And I couldn't even sleep. Like, I remember I had to sleep on the couch and sit up, because if I laid down, and
that's an abscess.
I'm trying to do everything, nothing. And without me even knowing it, Danielle was making phone calls and set up, I think, insurance at that time. And I was able to go to the dentist, and it was just like major relief. Now, I'm in excruciating pain. She's fine.
I don't even remember that.
I remember that. But the fact that she was just like, man, I care so much, and I'm so concerned for him. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure that he is taken care of. And I was like, man, it made me experience love in a different way from her, because she was willing to do that. Because at the time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what resources were available. But she did that. And that's what partners do in a relationship. We see that this happens usually much older in a relationship, where people become of age and they start getting sick, and then one becomes like almost like a caretaker for the other,
God
and
forbid.
Things of that nature. But see, that's that's the level of maturity that your relationship at some point will go in, where you're showing up for each other in a way.
Yeah, that's when the relationship has developed into serious oneness, right? This is my rib, and like, you know what, my rib is aching, I'm aching, right? It hurts me to see them hurting. But you had said earlier, when you see your spouse is down, you should get down. And I want to bring another layer to that, because, somebody might be thinking, I'm not trying to come down because this person's down. Well, it's not that you want to be down and sick with them, or down and depressed with them, but sometimes you need to get down with your spouse to pull them back up. Right? Like, it's harder for you to help somebody up from a standing position when they're already on the floor. When somebody passes out and you got to do CPR, could you imagine if you standing up and get up so I can give you CPR and blow air into your lungs? Right. Like, sometimes you need to get down with the person to assess the situation. What's going on? Tell me. Get on the floor with your spouse if they're depressed and sad, and lay down with them if they're not feeling well, as long as it ain't contagious. You know what I'm saying? COVID, we got to put a mask on. But you understand the point. The point is that sometimes we have to get down low with our partner to assess the situation. Sometimes it's just about encouraging, and seeing them. And that's all they need to get back up, or to keep running the race, whatever it is that they're running. There it is. Listen, guys, we're talking about kindness and what that looks like as an aspect of love. We're talking about the 16 characteristics of love according to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I hope you're getting something out of this. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back and talk about, well, what if I'm in a loveless relationship? We're on the struggle bus. We're in crisis. My spouse is mean and surly. How do I show up and still be my best self in the midst of the crazy and the chaos? Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Sabrina Lambert from Indianapolis, Indiana.
And I'm her husband, Charles Lambert from Indianapolis, Indiana.
We decided to do our testimonial today to let you know it's all worth coming down to Atlanta with Hasani and Danielle to get the help and get the tools that you really need to make it work and last. And was hesitant at first, but I'm glad that we made that decision to come this way. We got the tools that we needed. It was hard work,
Yes.
many hours,
Yes.
but we got the tools that we need to go forward when we return home. And it set some things straight for me to feel comfortable with understanding how to forgive my husband,
Yes.
as well as forgive myself and move forward in a true and genuine way in forgiveness. And knowing that it takes genuine forgiveness to move forward in our marriage to make it last. So I encourage you, if you are struggling to understand your personality, the when, the why, the how things have happened in your marriage, this is where you need to be.
Hasani and Danielle, very helpful. So like my wife said, if you need to help, the professional help, to come and visit them here in Atlanta, beautiful country. They will do you right, and your marriage will benefit from all the expertise that they have to get through the troubled times. And I know for me and Sabrina that we are on the right path now for success. Thank you.
Here it is. If you ever want to know the power of a private marriage intensive or a last chance weekend and what it can do for your relationship, this is why we share these testimonials, because listen, we could talk about it all day, but the proof is in the pudding. People come in from a place of complete desperation with hopelessness, not knowing what their future is going to be. And then they leave with a foundation. They leave with a course, a plan, a commitment. And it's just very rewarding to see what's done in the lives of other couples.
Yes, yes. And, I wanted to get back to something that you were saying. You were talking about that kindness and how we relate to one another. And, kindness and love and generosity and consideration, because that's what we're down to, it will have you doing some crazy things. Because I was just talking about getting down to help somebody get up, unless they're contagious. But your crazy in love self, when I had COVID, kept coming into the room, and you were like checking on me, or you were running through, but you kept coming into the room, and I'm like, he just misses me. He just needs to see my face. And that is what love will do, right? And then you ended up catching COVID.
So that means you don't love me?
Why?
Because you was ghost.
That is not. I brought you
I'm playing with you.
coffee.
She brought me coffee. She did. I had the jab. But yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I caught COVID right after you.
Yeah.
I slept that night in the bed while you were spreading COVID all through those sheets. And I caught it right after. But no, so when I'm down, she's making drinks. She's putting concoctions together.
Yeah,
she's
man,
serving
I'm boiling.
me.
I'm cutting up
doing
ginger.
it all, running back and forth to the store.
Listen.
Because that's what you do, and that's what it's about. Like, think
Dr.
about
Danielle.
But Danielle, like, being in a miserable marriage feels more lonely than being alone.
Yeah.
Because when you actually have someone who can show up and they refuse to show up, it's a very lonely feeling. And so this is the place where a lot of people find themselves in their relationship. And so the question then becomes, well, if I'm in misery, if I'm in relational hell, if I have a spouse who's still doing dirt, who's just disinterested, not engaging, how in the world are you going to expect me to be kind? Like, how does this even resonate?
If you don't experience kindness.
Exactly.
Like, you want me to be kind, but I don't experience kindness. But there's a process for that as well.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is, you still have your responsibility to show up as your best self as best you can. And in order to do that, there's certain things you got to do. Like, number one, we talk about this all the time. You've got to engage in your own self-care.
Period.
Like, you got to take care of yourself.
Literally.
Because you cannot pour out of an empty vessel. And if you're on E, how can you continue to show up for other people when you're broken? So what are you doing to take care of you?
It makes me think about that self-care piece is important, and it makes me think about how when we are in a broken state and we're like, I can't even offer up kindness to anyone because I'm so broken, I'm so bitter, you realize that you are actually pouring onto yourself the very thing that you don't desire, right? You operating in bitterness, you operating in resentment, being vengeful, being nasty and surly, all it does is attack you. Literally, it attacks you, your mindset, your your immune system, you just don't feel good at all because you're spewing out what was given to you. And I do recognize that some of us are mirroring back to our spouses what's been given to us, but that is not serving you.
Wow.
And so when you recognize that that's not serving you, you didn't get that from yourself, that isn't even what you're made of, that's not what you're about, but it's been coming at you for so many years, you're just dishing it back. You got to realize it's time to draw a circle around your own 2 feet and focus on your own self-care. So actually offering yourself kindness means that you're not going to give out nastiness in return for nastiness. It feels better to offer up kindness, generosity, compassion in exchange for the nastiness. It's actually like a fire hose of water extinguishing the fire that somebody is torching you with. It's interesting how that works. We think it's the other way around. Oh, I'm going to give it back to you because you're giving it to me. It never serves. It's always the power position to show up with love and kindness.
Water puts fire out. Fire doesn't put fire out. It just creates more of a fire.
A bigger fire.
Oh, for sure. And so, listen, in addition to self-care, if your spouse is acting crazy or not acting right or not giving, this is where boundaries come in. You have to set boundaries. And remember, boundaries are not about you controlling somebody else's behavior. It's really about you controlling your own. In essence, you're saying, you know what, while we're in this state, there's just certain things that I am not going to tolerate. There's certain behaviors that are completely unacceptable, and I'm not going to continue to show up. So I'm going to set clear boundaries with my spouse, have a conversation, and we're going to talk about these things because I've got to put limits on myself, or I've got to build up some type of self-preservation so I'm not broken in this process. This is where acceptance comes in, and this is why I think many people don't understand what that word means. Acceptance doesn't mean accepting that this is okay, giving your partner a pass, making them think that it's no big deal for what they're doing. But acceptance, a part of acceptance is accepting that this is my current reality that I find myself in. Because if I don't accept where I'm at, I will continue to do what most people do. We try to ignore it. We stick our heads in the sand. We don't want to believe it, and we engage in things that keep us spiraling in just a negative in a negative place.
Yep.
But accepting where you're at and establishing clear boundaries and making it clear what interaction will be like, I think is going to be important for you so that you can show up as your best self and still give acts and behaviors of kindness in the relationship. Because guess what? When you do well for other people, it does something for you. When, just to your point, like what you're trying to punish somebody else with, you're actually punishing yourself. So it doesn't serve you when you do that. So even if you feel like, you know what, I'm casting my pearls to swine, meaning I'm doing all these good things and the person I'm doing it to doesn't even really receive it, just know that you may not always reap where you sow, but you will reap what you sow, and God will give it back to you.
100%. Absolutely. Let's go to the second point. I think setting boundaries is really important. We think about even if it's a stranger, right? So we're talking about giving kindness and how to do that to people who are not offering kindness. When it's with a stranger and you interact with somebody in the streets and they were rude, maybe it's at a shopping center or something like that, we know what it feels like to be like, ma'am, please, and not give anybody our energy, right? You know also what it feels like to get into an altercation and how draining that is. So these are the kinds of boundaries that we need to set in all areas of our life and even with our partner. If we have a partner that shows up a certain kind of way, you can set a boundary that keeps you from going there. That means that you walk away, or you take a time out, or you literally let the person know that, hey, I'm no longer engaging in these kinds of conversations and arguments. That if you want to do that, that's fine, but I am no longer engaging in this, and this is how we're going to do it. That really helps you to stay in your lane and keeps you from doing things that you just know are not serving you. And sometimes that's what it takes. And then you have to actually stand your ground, because your partner can test you. People will test you. They'll try to push you to the limit to see if it is really what it is, if you're actually going to do what you say that you do. And when you stand your ground and you start to shift and do things differently, you're no longer so easily agitated. You're no longer easily set off and getting into arguments. They will start to notice.
Absolutely. And that goes into the next point. Like, if you're in this space, you have to use empathetic listening. Empathetic listening is not just quickly reacting emotionally to everything your partner says, but really taking the time to truly understand and get to the root of what they're saying. And this is why communication and developing these skills is so critically important, because we're so triggered sometimes by what our spouse says or what we assume our spouse is going to say, because we understand their patterns and we've been dealing with them for so long. And so we're constantly triggering each other.
Always,
but when you listen with an empathetic ear to say, let me truly understand the heart of it. What are you trying to say when you say that? Because oftentimes what we're fighting about is our fruit issues, but there's always the root issue that keeps creating the fruit. So when this situation happened, what did this really represent for me?
Right.
What did this really mean for me? Let's get to that, because if I can understand that and we can address those issues, then we won't continue to have the same breakdowns in our communication when they happen. And so I won't be emotionally reacting. I will choose to respond in a healthy and productive way.
Yeah, but be careful when it comes to empathetic listening. Before we move into respond and not reacting, and just don't respond, don't react. That empathetic listening is important, because you got to be careful in that zone, because patience is really a key part of that. And a lot of times, even questioning, if you're questioning, it could set your partner off. And now you're in a frustrated situation because you're asking too many questions, right? And so in that space of empathetic listening and, inquiring to understand, to get clarity, be careful in that zone. That is a really tricky area that the enemy uses to cause conflict. I know some of y'all know what I'm talking about. But if we move into responding over reacting, we can overcome a lot of challenges, because in that moment where you're asking questions to get clarity and you're seeing and hearing the frustration coming from your spouse, you can still maintain a certain level of control based on how you respond. Oftentimes we get annoyed because of the response and we react, right? You've lit the fire. I was just trying to get clarity. I just need understanding. And you went from 0 to 1,000. I can't even ask you questions. I don't even know how to talk to you. Now you've blown all the way up. Like, the whole situation is blown up. But if you maintain control during that moment and you respond, continuing to listen, you can maintain control and avoid a lot of conflict.
For sure.
I mean, that's a really tricky area right there, isn't it?
For sure. Listen, in this space, what we're trying to do is help you show up as your best self and help you have the best perspective while you're in your darkness. Like, let me tell you that when you're in the cave, there's darkness all around you. And so many people are scared of the dark because all they can see is dark. But while you're in that darkness, you have to have a positive outlook. And that's the next point. Like, you gotta focus on the positive, because there was a season when, guess what? You were in a good place and you find yourself trapped in hell right now. But in order to get out of hell, you can't keep focusing on the hell that you're in. You got to focus on the season you want to be in order to get out of the season that you currently are in. So if you're in winter, focus on spring. If you're in summer and it's hot and just miserable, focus on fall. Like, focus on where you want to be, not where you are, because having that proper mindset is critical, because you become a magnet and you begin to draw to you who and what you are. If you're thinking the proper thoughts, think about it. If I'm living in fear, worry, and doubt, those are my thoughts, those are my feelings, then I'm going to show up in life, I'm going to show up in my marriage from a position of fear, worry, and doubt. So automatically I'm bringing negativity into the scenario because I'm operating in it. My vibrational frequency is one of it. And whatever's happening on the inside manifests outwardly. And so I've got to have a clear vision and a clear focus, and I've got to remain positive, because that is what's going to lean me in the direction to get to a better place. And when I begin to show up as a positive person, it becomes infectious. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're mean and surly, it's going to impact your spouse. If you're healthy, whole, and happy, it will impact your spouse. So peer pressure is a real thing, whether it's positive or negative. And you can apply the right pressure, the right positive pressure, that will not just impact you, but it will impact the entire atmosphere and mood of that relationship and take you out of the hell into a better place.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about kindness. And if you think about this, this all comes into perspective, right? Like, this is how we should be operating with one another. And in addition to focusing on the positive, you want to just continue to communicate communicate honestly, and that might mean, this conversation is just getting too hot. I just need to take a 10-minute break. Always maintaining your own self-control. That's the only thing that you can control, y'all. We think we can control our partners, but we can't. And the moment we step into that behavior, you literally are, you're in for a fight, right? Because your partner has their way of being. But you can always control and maintain your behavior. So be honest with your feelings. Be clear. And be open to share, this is too much for me at this moment, or share the frustrations that you have. Whatever it is that you need to communicate, make sure that openness and honesty is a key part of every conversation and every interaction that you have. That's how you put a bow on it, right? When it comes to communication and kindness. That's how you put a bow on it when it comes to kindness, is showing up with real, honest communication.
I think you just put a bow on our topic. Guys, listen, we always encourage that you have a conversation with your spouse. Watch this together. Like this is your homework for the week. We're going to be giving you videos every single day that will impact your relationship, but take the time to watch this and self-assess. How am I showing up in the area of kindness? What can I begin to do that I'm not currently doing that will demonstrate my kindness? Even when I don't feel like doing it, I'm going to make the decision to do it. My feelings will now begin to integrate into the actions so that it's received in a positive way because I'm delivering it in a positive way.
And last point is that, as you start to show kindness, you become kind. And that's really what this is all about. You becoming. Kindness feels good. Kindness feels like. Kindness is exuberating love. You want to be that. You can't absorb and become darkness when you are operating in kindness. And so it's really about you transforming you. Other people get to benefit by you transforming your heart and your mind and operating in kindness.
And one way to become is by doing. So if you have not signed up for the 28-day love challenge, we want you to go ahead and do it today. Wherever you find yourself in that challenge, be consistent to demonstrate an act of love to your spouse until you get through. And then once the challenge is over, it's no longer a challenge to demonstrate this love. It becomes a part of your natural instinctual behavior. And that's what this is all about. But guys, we appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Tune in tomorrow for another great topic in our love series. Take care.